Considering if I wanted to, I could have called out first thing this morning sick.
Yeah,
but I didn't.
Yeah, the thing is I'm old and wise. Sam's a lot younger than me. And one of the things that I've learned is there's a certain time I think I'm going to go to bed. Well, he stayed up a little later and he paid the price.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Welcome to a new episode of Sam's Garage. Coming up, Sam and Doug are preparing to tackle the next leg of the great race. The Chevy Bel Air gets a new heavy-duty rear differential. The SE300 receives a complete new engine wiring harness. And Sam installs a new Edelbrock EFI system on an LS3 swap truck. Sam and Doug make steady progress on the great race while heading to Binghamton, New York.
The Gettysburg State Park is something that I think everyone needs to see. They have an auto tour that is 18 miles long, and it shows everything from the history of Gettysburg, the battlefields, everything's untouched. Very cool. So what we're doing here, as you can see, Doug is still in the car doing the annotation, trying to get ready for his instructions. Remember, we only have 30 minutes. We get our instructions before we go on the route, 30 minutes before we head out. So it's multiple pages, sometimes 30 pages. So he's got to go through, make sure what's going on, get himself kind of prepared for what we need to do. That way it's an easier transition when we get into the car. There's a sweep truck called McAllister's, okay? This is the same group that's going to be taking most of the cars from our endpoint in Maine to whoever's homes the cars live. So they're gonna have a rig up there, they're gonna do a transport for everyone, it's gonna be enclosed. But while we're driving, they have two sweep trucks. And the cool thing is that the driver of the sweep truck is taking a vacation and volunteering his time to drive the truck just so he can follow all of us and sweep us up if we fail or break down or something. Yesterday morning, within the first 30 minutes, they picked up two cars. And it's really cool. They take them back to the point, they get them fixed up, they go back on the road, and if they break down again, they'll go do it again, no charge. Very nice service from McAllister's Transport. Here we are in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Take a look at this crowd. The cars look so cool in this old town. You've got a courtyard here in the middle of town. It is all filled up with people, tents. They got free food for us. The coolest part about the great race is the great welcome that we're getting at every town we stop in. The next town is going to be Binghamton, New York, and I'm sure we're going to get the same amount of welcome there as well. But this is incredible, guys. The love for racing and the love for these rally cars. 2,300 miles, you guys are awesome. When we roll up in the 240, it is the only Nissan, it is the only import here. And so I can't even tell you the amount of love that car gets, the amount of pictures they take of that car. It is incredible. We've been going through the mountains. There's not been a lot of humidity. The wind feels good. You guys see those guys in the open cockpit, full coveralls, dressed up. They're not even sweating that much, believe it or not. They only sweat when they come to a stop. So this is very cool. Doug and I are about to go get some lunch, and then we're gonna head out of here. We're gonna go on to Binghamton, New York, and we'll have our evening stop there. So we'll see you guys there.
Wonderful morning this morning. Sam's spot on. His mind is focused. He's absolutely doing a great job. So I'm working with him hard, trying to keep him right on track.
You're doing a good job too.
I'm doing okay today. Today's much better, but you know what? Yesterday morning, we had a great morning. It was the afternoon, so let's not do what we did yesterday afternoon.
Yes, let's get through the afternoon and we should be okay tonight.
Okay tonight.
Here we are in Binghamton, New York. Today we came across a very cool black bear. He was just slowly crossing the road. We saw him. We had to slow down. That was one reason. We had to slow down, but lots of deer, lots of animals. It is very cool. Seeing these cars, as old as they are, make it 2,300 miles through some serious hills and stuff. The brakes work, everything's working. So very impressive. And these cars have to be original. They can't be modified. They can't have engine swaps. They have to be original to their year. You can do safety upgrades, but you can't do anything that's going to enhance the performance of the vehicle.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam removes the stock rear end of the Chevy Bel Air to make room for the new heavy-duty 9-inch Positrack upgrade.
So while Julie and I are waiting for our fuel system to arrive, we decided we got the quick performance rear end, why not go ahead and install it? We got 550 horsepower with a 480 transmission. We're gonna need the rear end to withstand all that horsepower and torque. 373 gears, 9-inch rear end, along with Positraction LSD.
Yeah, this is gonna be a really nice upgrade to this car.
Right after you spray some paint on it.
Of course. Look at over here. It looks like someone's building a nest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, someone's been busy.
Look at that.
So that's gonna just trap moisture inside the frame.
That is inside the frame rail.
Yeah.
Right, and this is why it's so good to have a bottle of NHOU around. If you have nooks and crannies like that, even in the South, we're not dealing with snow and brine.
Yeah, but we've got mice.
We got mice.
You wouldn't even think about, like, no one's gonna go under their car and check that. I mean, especially if you don't have a lift.
Well, you know, the scent inside the NHOUs was gonna deter them. All right, so I'm sitting here debating on how I'm gonna remove this rear end the easiest way, and that's gonna be to swing the leaf springs down. And I'm looking at the shackles and looking to see what bolt I can actually remove, and it's gonna be the top bolt here on the rear shackle. I'm gonna remove it, swing the leaf spring down, and in that way I'll get my rear end out. You see the quick performance 9-inch rear end is in the Bel Air. Everything worked out good. I'm gonna pour my AMSOIL differential fluid in it once the tank is out, because then I could very easily pour it in. I should have done it on the ground.
Anything that would have made this more heavy than it already is would have been a bad idea. It was much heavier than the factory rear end.
Yep, it was, absolutely. But it's designed to handle all the extra horsepower that we're gonna make. So it's perfect. I do have to get new emergency brake cables because our Willwood calipers e-brake has a hook and the other ones just had a slot. So I gotta change this back half portion of the e-brake. Hopefully that won't be too bad. Then we'll get that working. I have to make all new brake lines. At some point somebody ran a hard line from the front to the back in such a dangerous manner with like 4 sections, very bad. It was going through the tunnel where the drive shaft lived. So I cut all that out. I'm gonna have to go to the store, get some hardline, come back here and really make a nice brake system for it. But it's all installed. So the last thing I want to do is put the rear end up into the car and measure my drive shaft from the flange of the seal all the way over to the half portion of the cap. All right, Julie and I got the quick performance 9-inch rear end installed in the Bel Air. You guys pay attention to the tags on the rear end. You got one that says no oil. This is actually a nice tag. It's plastic. Put that in your toolbox and use it for future builds for those engines that may not have oil in it. And then right here, you've got another tag that tells you pretty much what oil to use and the braking procedure for the rear end.
Yeah, they're very specific too, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah, you're spending a lot of money on these parts. You want to protect your investment. So I've got 56¼ inches for the drive shaft. I'm going to call Dwayne and the boys at Driveline Service of Atlanta. I'm going to subtract 1/4 inch for a little bit of safety wiggle room, and then we'll have a drive shaft in. I'm going to do the brake lines by making a brand new hard line from the back to the front after we install our Willwood master cylinder. Today it's popular to make your letters stand out by painting them white or gold or whatever color you think looks cool with your car. Well, they've made these stand out to where they're indented and it looks really good just by itself. But if you wanted to paint them, it's got like an edge to where you can keep your paint right in the letters and it makes for a nice cleaner deal. That's a nice little touch that I think they just added that to their tires. Now, me being a commercial tire distributor, I went ahead and went with Tire Distributors of Georgia. They do an awesome job. They've got the inventory, they've got the personnel, and they've got the customer service, and they deliver to me. So if you guys are in the Georgia area, you want to give them a call, Tire Distributors of Georgia, and get yourself an account. They've got everything you need, but the best part about it is the customer service. I'm going to be using my Corgi Master 28 automatic tire machine to install these, along with the balancer. I'll have a nice smooth ride because historically, Falken does an awesome job with both performance, all season performance, wet and dry weather, and they're very quiet. They've also got a huge line of performance tires and passenger tires along with off-road tires.
Welcome back to more Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. Victory Motorsports stops by Sam's Garage to help install the new wiring harness and bring the SC300 back to life.
All right, guys, we are continuing on with our Nopi project. We've got the SC300 back in the shop. I got a couple of guests with me this time from Victory Motorsports right here in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. I got Brian and Edwin. These guys are awesome when it comes to doing supers or any kind of performance work. What are we going to be doing today, guys?
We're going to be doing today the harness for a tweak harness and then a link ECU, controlling all power plants on the car, making everything smooth, making it run like factory, performing how it should.
Awesome. Let's get started.
These are IG1A coils, very powerful performing coils. There's just about anything else is controlling all spark, powerful, best you can get on the market.
Yeah, I mean, these coils will put out enough power for over 2,000 horsepower, extremely reliable, and I mean, for really any kind of high performance application, I mean, you can't go wrong with them. I mean, we've done testing and seen a 50 horsepower increase just by changing out the ignition systems.
Tweak Performance down in South Carolina, get a nice wire harness for this car. He jumped right aboard to help us out with everything we needed for all the coils, ignitions, all your sensors, inside, makes it look all nice and neat, makes it plug and play. After you send them everything you need, it flows right on with your harness.
Vibration and stuff moving and stuff rubbing. You can chafe through the harness, you can rip a wire. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen. It's really a good practice to make sure you mount that harness in place to make sure it doesn't move. Normally what we do is we go ahead and plug everything in so that way when we give power to the car, we can go ahead and double check and make sure everything's working. Depending on what the customer wants, they might request that we add something later. So if they do request that while we're doing the installation, we won't mount the ECU until the car is finished. That way, if we need to go back into the harness, we can repin something or we can add something or take something out or anything that you might have to do. So we'll go ahead and get this plugged up, get the harness plugged into the chassis harness so that way the dash and everything in the car will have power. And then later on, we'll get the ECU mounted.
The guys did an awesome job installing the wire harness. It's pretty much done except for the power wire to the relays, which we're going to hook up to the starter, along with a couple of other ground wires that Brian's going to hook up to the motor mount. And then we should be able to go up, and Edwin's going to hook up to the laptop.
We'll go in there and configure all the settings, all the data that it needs to get this motor running.
On this setup right here, we're going to be running the Thunder. The Thunder is a really good unit. That was always our favorite unit because of the amount of inputs and outputs and the amount of control that you have with it. I think for your average street car that this unit is probably a little bit overkill. You'd want to go with something a little bit more minimal. You don't really need to overshoot your goals when you're buying an ECU because this unit's really going to have a lot of stuff that it can do that a lot of people aren't going to need on a street car application. I think for a track car, it's a really good choice. This ECU does have dual wideband controllers built into the ECU, so you can run up to 2 wideband O2 sensors, which is ideal for a V8 application. And if you're running like something like a VR35, which comes in a GTR or some kind of custom setup with an engine that's got dual E throttles, this unit will actually run 2 drive-by-wire throttle setups. Link just recently came out with the Voodoo. The Voodoo is going to be the next model up from the Thunder. It's a really, really good unit. The unit is super fast. Link ECU, they've been around a long time and they really do have some really awesome units. It really comes comes down to tuner preference as far as the software goes. This is Edwin's favorite software to use. They have 512 megabytes of onboard data logging memory, one of the market's fastest motorsports processors, which is ideal for, especially for a racing application where you're getting down to like the millisecond with injectors, you're getting down to a 0.1 degree of timing when it's with ignition timing. The units are extremely accurate. They do come with a limited lifetime warranty.
Brian and Edwin from Victory Motorsports did an awesome job completing the wire harness and getting our Lynx ECU hooked up so that next week when we install the fuel system along with our Victory Motorsports fuel injectors, we're going to be able to go ahead and crank up the car.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. Sam installs a new Edelbrock ProFlow EFI system and transmission controller on a 92 Chevy 1500 with an LS3 engine.
I got my good customers 92 Chevy Silverado in the shop today. I put a 6-liter LS3 engine in it. This is now known as the OBS, old school body style. These things are very popular. But that old computer, even though everything is new, that computer is still almost 30 years old. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the fuel injection, which is running a factory GM style, and I'm gonna go in with an Edelbrock ProFlow EFI and a transmission controller. It's gonna look old school classic like it did when it was first put out, and it's gonna drive a lot better. All right, so we got the old manifold off first. That's gonna give us access to get the rest of the wire harness out. But in reverse order, first I'm going to install my TCU harness for the transmission. Because the intake's out of the way, I can go right over the bell housing and put that in. Then I can put on my Edelbrock intake manifold, and once I do that, I can go ahead and wire up the wire harness for the ProFlow. So because this intake gasket is going to be an O-ring, it's always smart to first wipe the cylinder head surface down with a towel, then take a little bit of Sil Glide and lube around each port. Now that that is on, we can go ahead and put the sub harness for the ignition side on, which is the crank sensor, cam sensor, and the ignition coil packs. Then I'm going to go in with the main harness and connect everything else up. What we have here are injectors R, and then we have injectors L. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the fuel injectors, ECT, TPS, and the map sensor. I'm gonna feed it underneath the intake manifold, and then I'll go ahead with the main harness. All right, so we got the main harness here. This is gonna plug in to the two sub harnesses, one of them being the ignition harness, the other one being the fuel injection harness. This only has so much length. So between where you put your computer and the back of the intake manifold is roughly 24 to 36 inches. So I think I'm gonna put the computer right here. That way I got plenty of room to get to my connectors right there at the back of the intake manifold. The intake manifold that I had on before was an LS3, and I had a low car universal throttle cable on it. I am able to reuse my throttle cable because the old setup was longer than the new setups. Now, the low car throttle cable bracket is gonna go right onto the Edelbrock, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put on the ball to hook up to the end for the cable. So what you wanna do, you wanna go on the inside of the vehicle and push in the inner cable. That way you can cut the outer cable to length without accidentally cutting your inner cable. That way you can reuse this whole low car throttle cable. Now what I love about the Edelbrock ProFlow EFI is everything works seamlessly. The idle air control valve works, the TPS sensor works, the map sensor is for the vehicle and for the system, it works. When it comes to these Edelbrock nice valve covers, these are covers for the existing valve covers and coil packs. Well, depending on the accessory drive you have, these may or may not fit. These are very nice, but if you have an engine bay where it's open and you can use these, it's gonna make for a nice look under the hood. It's gonna give it that classic look. All right, guys, don't forget to wipe off those fingerprints. Look how good that looks. This car came with a round air filter back in '92 when it was brand new. It's got a round one back on it. Looks period correct. It's gonna perform very nice too.
Be sure to check out Sam's Garage on these other media platforms. Send us questions and feedback to info@samsgaragetv.com. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Sam's Garage. We saw plenty of action on the great race. The Bel Air now has a new rear differential. Victory Motorsports helped install the new wiring harness. And the Chevy truck has a new Edelbrock ProFlow EFI system.